And something that we've seen time and time again from our top 1% members at Dropship Unlocked is that
another thing that we've noticed, Lewis, is the attitude to risk that people have at the top 1% level versus lower levels and people that are getting started or people that haven't yet reached the levels they want to get to. What have you noticed about the most successful people and their attitude to risk?
I think it's that they know when to go for it. They don't just wing it. It's a bit like booking a holiday. You're not just going to pack up and leave without checking your flight details and making sure that your accommodation's sorted. You plan it out, don't you? You have to kind of prepare these things in advance, but at some point you've got to click book and you've got to actually go for it. And so that's the difference. There are kind of serial planners who never actually do and they never click the book button. But then there's also people who just wing it and don't have anything planned and it kind of unravels and falls apart. So it's that balance of the two. It's that confidence whilst having that willingness to learn, the confidence being the confidence to move ahead and click book, move ahead, launch your business, move ahead and register your Shopify store, whatever the first actions that you need to take are. And something that we've seen time and time again from our top 1% members at Dropship Unlocked is that they refuse to become paralyzed by fear. So they take these calculated risks like calling a new supplier for the first time or testing out a new ad strategy, but they do it on a small scale before they go all in. So a lot of them have backup plans too. If one supplier can't deliver, they've got another one ready to step in. They've got equivalent products. They've diversified their income stream from different suppliers, from different ad strategies. They've got good SEO up and running. And so when you take risks, make sure that they're smart, test things out, have a backup, don't be reckless, but more important than anything, keep taking action, keep moving forwards. And it's about taking calculated risks constantly. That is business.
It is. Yeah, it's constantly analyzing the upside versus the downside. And something that really successful people do is they're able to flip what conventional wisdom is around risk, especially when it comes to getting started with a dropshipping business. So, not just when you're up and running and taking new business strategies. When you're getting started, the conventional wisdom around risk is that it's very risky to start an online business and to work on yourself and to invest in yourself. Whereas the non-risky thing is to stay in a 9-to-5 job and go up the corporate ladder. But people that are able to really succeed in this world and go after their goals and be entrepreneurial and build businesses, they flip that on their head and they realize that the risk involved in staying in an unfulfilling job where you don't reach your potential and you don't live a life that you really are proud of is higher, because of the risk is very high in terms of that's very likely to happen if you're not in a job where you feel fulfilled. And then they're able to reduce the risk of going into a business and going after an entrepreneurial pursuit where, yes, there's no guarantee of success, but what is guaranteed is that you'll learn a lot about yourself and you'll grow an incredible, and they'll be able to grow an incredible business out of the back of that, and they'll learn so much from that process. So they're able to flip that, which I find really fascinating. And it's something that was a big part of my journey when I had to get started, because the conventional wisdom is that it's risky to start an online business, but I had to flip that and realize the risk was staying in something that was very unfulfilling and not getting started. With that as well, risk, sometimes it comes pressure with growing businesses or creating an income for yourself. But the people that are most successful, we see them really thrive under that pressure and they're able to perform when things are tough. So how do you think business owners overcome challenges and thrive under that pressure?
Yeah, well, just to pick up on something you just mentioned there about the risk of inaction, for me, when I was in that position and I was considering the two paths of the slightly unknown path of creating a business and controlling my own income and freedom and having autonomy versus staying in a job, it wasn't even so much that it was a risk that if I stayed in the job, I would be unfulfilled. It was almost a certainty. So it was like, okay, well, this route, it will certainly not allow me to reach my potential. And this one over here might do, but I have control on whether it does or not. Because I can pivot, I can switch, I can start a different business, I can do things, I can change things. In the job, I'm kind of confined. I'm operating in someone else's sandpit. I'm like confined by the rules of the game in that environment. And so that was the bit for me. It was like, oh, well, I'm certainly never going to reach my potential and never going to be truly fulfilled in this environment, but there's an option to be over here. So for me, it was a real, straightforward decision. So I just wanted to clarify that because that risk argument, I think sometimes where people think, oh, it's a risk not leaving. For me, it was a certainty that if I stayed, it will, eventually I would maybe retire one day, but I would never have hit my potential. So that's the one thing. The thing about business owners thriving under pressure that you mentioned, I think the thing that we see our top 1% members do, if we refer to them as that, is that they don't crumble when things go wrong. Instead they lean into the problem and they figure out how to fix it. It's just like if your phone starts acting up, if I'm like, oh, the iPhone won't turn on. I was having an issue with the AirPods just before this episode. I don't just say, all right, I'm going to throw them away. I troubleshoot it. I had to connect it to my phone and then back to the MacBook, and eventually we figured out the issue. But I think that's just on a micro scale what you have to constantly do in business, because you're always going to have issues. There are always going to be things that rear their head, problems in the business, stuff you need to optimize. But if you're ready to throw in the towel at the first sign of trouble, then you're never going to make it long term. So it's about training your mind. And it's something that we see our top 1% members do differently, is that they don't see those problems as setbacks or kind of brick walls. They just see them as part of the journey. They're like the inevitable hurdles that we're going to have to jump over to make it to the end destination. And they embrace it and they try and enjoy the process of jumping the hurdles, the journey, rather than just thinking, okay, I've got to jump over 100 more hurdles and then I'll be set for life and I'll be at that final destination and I'll never have to worry again. I think if that's the way you view it, it's a little bit delusional, because you'll probably never reach that point where there are no more hurdles to jump over, because life's going to throw you hurdles whatever route you take. So you might as well start to get into the swing of it and enjoy the process. So when something goes wrong, these people don't quit. They figure out what went wrong, they fix it, and they move forward. So when things don't go as planned, don't throw in the towel. Try and see it as just a setback, a temporary hurdle, adjust your strategy and keep moving forwards.
Yeah, it's a real game-changing mindset, having that in place, because there'll be inevitable ups and downs. The problem with quitting is that every time you quit, whatever you then go on to start again, you have to start again from scratch. So if you're continually quitting when things get tough, every time you're saying, okay, now I'm going to throw in the towel for all of the hard work I've put in up to that point, and I'm going to go back to ground zero again and have to build it up every time. And the problem with that is every time you go back to start again, you lose all of that momentum that you'd built up. You lose all of that work you put in, and every time you have to restart. So just know there will be times that will be tough. For me, I had a moment when my suppliers all turned around and said that they were no longer going to supply me very early on in my business, the first 4 suppliers. But that was because I had made mistakes in the way I'd set my business up and the way I'd set my website up. And I needed to pivot and make sure that my website was changed. And over the next couple of days, it was never a bigger problem as I thought it was. I just needed to prove to my suppliers that I had my own brand image and that I was able to look after customers in the way that they wanted. And in the end, it was all something that I probably was far too concerned about. But it was so easy to get very concerned when you're very early on. But I realized I needed to see that setback as something that I could learn from and take action in spite of, the fear, the panic that was coming in, and not just shy away and throw in the towel. So obviously with these things now, we can teach people how to avoid that in Dropship Unlocked, to ever have that situation happen in the first place. But even when things do happen, the key mindset is that you'll just view it as an inevitable setback that will happen, but you just spring back and you can keep pushing on regardless. So with all these types of things that we've talked about, Lewis, there's obviously some traits that are coming in clearly. But what about the habits that you see people often doing? What about some habits that you've noticed from our most successful members?
Yeah, that's an easy one. Consistency. Hands down, that they are showing up every day, even if it's just small tasks, like they're in checking their ad performance, or they're reaching out to a few more suppliers, or they're tweaking their website, or they're just jumping on a collaboration call to help a few members out, or they're jumping on a Q&A call to speak with us and ask any questions, or tuning into one of our live expert member sessions. The way I view it is kind of like it's baked into your habit. When you wake up in the morning or before you go to bed, you brush your teeth. You don't see the impact after one day. You don't brush your teeth and think, wow, my teeth are so healthy, I'm set for life for brushing my teeth. You do it every day. But over time, it's the thing that makes all the difference. And it's the reason why all your teeth don't fall out. We've got members who consistently track their metrics, and that allows them to then make real-time improvements that others miss, because they're constantly tweaking things, constantly improving, optimizing things along the way. So if you're serious about growing your business, make it a daily habit to jump in, check your numbers, do the couple of big, high leverage revenue generating activities that are on your list for the day, adjust what's needed, and just keep at it over time. Over time, it's that consistency over time that will lead to you being in that top percentile eventually. And that's just what we see from the many members who we see performing the best in our community over time. It's just the people that show up and they do the work and they do the daily activities required to get there, and they try and enjoy the journey as they go.